Welcome back. All right, our mission in this video is to create some interlocking buttons as the navigation for our UCI. Interlocking buttons. Let's think a little bit about what that means. We've got our three layers, rooms, pages, and controls. We want only one of them to be on at a time. That means that we need a button that when you navigate to one of those pages, it turns off the other ones. So an interlocking system is exactly that. You've got one button that can be exclusively on, turns the other ones off. This is very similar to, when you have a radio station in your car, in an older car, right, where they actually punch in and out, where you push the radio button in and the other ones literally punch out. You might call this a mutually exclusive system, interlocking radio-style buttons. These are all describing the exact same behavior of having one button on.
I would call it my 1979 Volvo.
That's what we're calling it from now on for the class. We're going to build our Volvo buttons. So to make our Volvo buttons, we did this previously in the control components branch, right? We did this by grabbing a selector component or by grabbing a control router that already has Volvo buttons. I can't wait to say Volvo buttons 1,000 times over the next couple of hours. Thanks, Patrick. We did that because that was built inherently into those components. And it was really easy to grab those and just kind of use that functionality for what we needed. And we could do that again. We're not going to do that. We're going to build our own. And you may ask yourself, well, why? Why, Nate? Why are we building these by hand when we have something that's really easy that we could grab? And it's a good question. And like I said at the beginning of the class, there are times when you might want to use control components for what they're very good at, because they are simple and they do exist already. It may seem weird that we're going to spend a while constructing this functionality on our own within the block controller. I promise you it will be worth it. I know in the beginning it may feel like we're wasting time just building something that we can already do easier. But by the end of it, I think you're going to see that what the block controller provides for us is the functionality to go farther than what the control components can do on their own. Not just go farther, but be more scalable so that when you add more things later on into your system, it's really easy to adapt the code to accommodate those increased requirements. And it's really flexible too. So we're going to see all of that as we get deeper into it. But first, we're going to build it out really simply and just see if we can figure out how it works with the buttons. Here's what we have behind us, right? We've got to add these three navigation buttons to our UCI. So we're going to configure three navigation buttons. These are going to be toggle buttons because they can either be on or off, and they want to remain in that state when they toggle. We're going to write an event handler for each navigation button. That's a brand new word. An event handler. Well, it shouldn't be brand new. You took 101. The event handler is the bit of script that happens whenever the button is pressed. When the button is pressed, that's an event. It's been pressed. Doesn't matter if it's turning it on or turning it off. That's an event. And someone needs to handle the event. That's the event handler. That's the list of the things it's going to do when the event occurs. And the things that it's going to do is going to be to show or hide the appropriate layers on our UCI, and also to turn on or off the other buttons, right? That's the interlocking behavior that we're looking for. As we do this, we're going to have some brand new concepts for you in the block controller. Our new concepts for this section include the event handler block. That's the one that I just talked about. It's this alligator tooth-shaped kind of mouth. We'll see that in just a moment. We're going to introduce you to the debug print block. That's a block we use to give us some feedback within Q-SYS about what is happening in our system. I'm going to show you the set UCI visibility block. This is a block that allows you to simply turn on or off a layer on our UCI and control the animation style in which it is revealed. And we're also going to be using the set control block. That changes the state of a particular control in our system. These are the four blocks we'll be using in this section. So let's go back to your design and let's jump to page 1. Let's find a place to add our controls for the UCI. There's a section right here called UCI layer control. That's where we'd like you to add it. Go ahead and find the block controller in the right-hand pane. You can find it under the scripting components branch, or you can type right here in the search field. If I type in block, it's going to filter everything beneath it to find the item I'm looking for. Just as a reminder, that filters everything beneath it, the components as well as the plugins and the user components too. I've gotten myself in trouble a lot of times trying to find a plugin or something that I know I have on my PC and I'm not realizing that I still am filtering out everything up here in my filter field. So get in the habit of, once you find the thing that you are looking for, hit that little X to clear out your filter, or else you might find later on it's frustratingly difficult to find. I've got my block controller here. The first thing we're going to do with the block controller, let me zoom in a little bit and collapse my sides here, is we're going to name it. The word block controller is not a great name. Let's name it something else so that as we add more block controllers throughout our design, we can find the one we're looking for very easily, give it a descriptive name that says what it is. I'm going to call mine UCI layer control block controller. Now, here's something I did intentionally. I named it block controller one word, really long. I did that on purpose. I did that on purpose because the component width is always going to accommodate the longest word in its name rather than stacking them on multiple lines. And if I have a really long word like block controller really wide, what it's going to do is it's going to let me read the entirety of the control pins that I expose in here. I might not even be exposing any control pins in this particular component, but if I am, I want to make sure that I can read them. Otherwise, the names kind of get truncated and you can't read it and you have to hover your mouse over the pin. So I always like making my blocks really wide just so I can read them when I need them. Read them when you need them. All right, we are going to open up the block controller. If this is your first time in the block controller, then this is its control panel where we can add controls to the block controller. It's not just an area where you can write code. We can create controls that are embedded within that code. Makes it really easy to reference them. We do want to add some controls here. We're going to add 3 toggle buttons for our navigation buttons, right? So we're going to do that by pressing this plus button right here under the controls section. Let's add 3 new controls. 1, 2, and 3. And these actually inherently come in as toggle buttons. We can and will later on be changing all types of different controls. We'll be adding different types of indicators and text and knobs. But right now, these come in as toggle buttons, so perfect, nice and easy. Keep them how they are. The only thing I want to do is name them. So let's rename them rather than control 1, control 2, and control 3. Once again, let's think about some good, good best practices on naming them, keeping that consistency across various elements of your design. We name these right with the 100 series, the 200 series, the 300 series on our UCI. So I'm going to call this nav 1 for the 100 series. We're going to call that room. And then the next one I'll call nav 2 underscore displays was second, right? And then nav 3 for cameras. That way, by prefixing them all with the word nav, if I'm looking for these all later, I'll know that all the navigation buttons will be grouped in the same place, which is, to me, more convenient than finding all of the camera elements grouped in the same place or things like that. So I'm naming them that way for a reason, with intention. And that's all we need to change for these right now. We do want to add them to our UCI. So I'm going to grab them and just drag them out of the block controller control panel first, put them right here on the schematic. And that way I can grab them all, kind of arrange them a little bit how I want right now, and I will then copy them and move them to my class UCI. Now, where are we going to put them? Be careful about this. I'm putting them on the base layer. I definitely don't want my navigation buttons to vanish when one of the more specific layers gets turned on and off, right? I want these navigation buttons to always be true. This is another advantage of layers over pages. On pages, you kind of have to have your navigation buttons, a new instance of them present on every single page. Here with layers, we only put them on once because that one layer is always visible. Think about the Z order of things. When we're talking about those glass panes, right? We've got XY coordinates where you place things left, right, or up and down. The Z order is their depth from your eyeball to the back of the UCI. There aren't any actual coordinates there, but that's the Z order from the top to the bottom. And realistically, everything that's on layer 100 is going to have a higher Z order than everything that goes down below. So things are always going to be on top of each other in the order that you made them here on the list of your UCI layers. But just because it's on the bottom layer doesn't mean that you can't access it. Bottom layer is where we want it to be. So I'm clicking on my bottom layer. I'm going to paste them, drop them down here at the bottom. I'm going to make them nice and wide. Let me zoom out just a little bit so I can see this. Once again, thinking about things like consistency, it's always a good idea to pick a consistent size for your buttons. I said that we're going to be re-theming our controls in a little bit with CSS, but sizes are important too. So I'm going to pick a size of, let's say, it looks like it's already 196 by 119. Let's call this 200 by 100. So it's twice as wide as it is tall. I'm going to do that for all three of them, 200 by 100. Those are going to be my Volvo navigation buttons. And then a couple other things we can do. I'm going to click all three of them. I'm going to make sure that they are aligned in the same vertical plane by aligning their vertical center. I'm going to distribute them evenly left to right to make sure that they have equal margins between them. Let's label them. I'm going to call this room. I'll call this displays. I'll call this camera. I know I'm going to change the font a little bit later, but I'm just going to increase the font just a little bit for now so that I can see them as I'm looking at them. That looks pretty good to me. We know we're going to pick a different visual choice in just a little bit, but we can test our functionality with them working before we apply all of that. So get yours in a place that you like them. I might make mine a little bit wider or something like that. Once they're all here, I'm actually going to group them together. And I'll click on the whole group and center the whole group on the page. Just nudge them over a little bit, and then I'll ungroup them again. Little tricks along the way you learn to make sure everything always looks nice and centered and